Hello, everyone. I am Angela Diffly, the co-founder of the Restaurant Technology Network. We're excited to have everybody joining us today for another pretty lively discussion here about AI in restaurants and what's happening today. These share groups have become really popular. We've done about, 10 of them, I'm going to say. And each time we try to host unique voices, if you will, in the vendor community, folks that are wrapping artificial intelligence around their solutions to optimize different various applications inside the restaurant industry. So I'm excited today to lead this discussion, and I'm going to dive right into our agenda here. So for today's topics, we're going to cover data infrastructure, procurement, menus, in-car commerce, sales, and proactive equipment monitoring. So there are so many ways, as you all know. I mean, every other day there's 10 articles about in our industry about AI and what's going on and what are the newest rollouts and who's doing what. And we've heard a lot about voice in the drive-through on these calls and various, computer vision applications and all kinds of interesting AI from front of house all the way through the back of the house and drive-through, everything in between. But today, these are the topics we're going to focus on, and our speakers map to these topics. So we are excited to dive in and get started. We will share a lot of great information. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. You should be able to use the chat functionality and the Q&A functionality to ask questions of our speakers. So if you have a burning question while someone's giving a presentation, don't worry, throw it in the chat, throw it in the Q&A, whichever is easier for you. And I encourage our speakers who are on today's call to address those questions as we move through the conversation. We'll have plenty of time, hopefully at the end, for a little bit more Q&A discussion. But the content that our speakers have prepared is really stellar. So I want to dive right in and get right to it and let them start sharing it with you. So we're going to start with Fourtop. Is Ben on the call? Hey, Ben, there you are. Ben Pryor is the co-founder and president of Fourtop. So I'm going to let him kick us off.
Thanks, Angela. Good to see everybody. I'm not going to talk too much about what Fourtop is, but want to spend some time kind of teeing up the rest of the speakers and talk about what the industry is trying to do and how they're trying to do it around AI. We can go to the next slide, Angela. This is the only AI I'm going to show in the presentation today, which is if you see the chef's face in the back, not too amazing. There's a lot of discussion around whether AI is early, late, it's right for hospitality, what version of AI should be in play in hospitality. The headline that I really want to talk about is AI lies. That may be a somewhat controversial statement. There's a lot of versions of it, which I will get into here in a couple of minutes. But I think it's important to realize that technology in general and AI specifically, AI is probably the worst version of this idea of tech, which is garbage in, garbage out. Also, we find generally that AI, especially in hospitality, tends to be siloed in specific parts of the business and specific systems. So I know last year when ChatGPT really kind of burst onto the public scene and discourse, actually, Angela, I think when you started the share group, because it was all over the news multiple times a day, a lot of hospitality tech companies ended up rushing into this idea of, well, how do I get AI into my system? ChatGPT, I think, was probably the easiest version of it. A few folks did like image generation for menus, but most companies that wanted to kind of add AI to their existing system went down the chat bot, or can I ask my system questions in a more conversational manner, which ChatGPT actually does a pretty amazing job at, sounding human-like, which I think is pretty cool. If you can go to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about some good and bad of these things. So what AI is really awesome at is doing things at extreme scale, 24/7. Also is really interested in catching little tiny details that humans may kind of overlook. I got really into speed reading years ago when I was in high school. Some of it was because I was just excited to go do other things besides sit around and read all day. And speed reading is actually a really interesting version of things that humans can do, which is actually what those of us that have run restaurants or currently are running restaurants are doing, is kind of glossing over a lot of minute details in order to try to drive results, happening in real time, and making a bunch of really quick decisions with a tiny bit of data. AI also is a lot more predictable and is generally not wrapped too much into emotion. However, on the weakness side, the problem that we generally see with AI is it lacks empathy. As I mentioned, with humans, they're incredible at kind of seeing holistically across a bunch of different data sets, et cetera, things happening in real time, and can improvise. Also, the main problem that I really see with AI right now is a lack of accountability. And this last point I think is really interesting. I don't know how many folks have seen in the news where some pretty notable chains have started to walk away from AI applications. A lot of those in the drive-through, some with voice AI. It just feels like there's kind of this pullback a little bit on the restaurant side, which is like, who's accountable when the AI goes wrong? And I think the interesting part is AI theoretically in hospitality is trying to solve for accountability. And the simple version, again, I'll kind of go through to drive through AI. The interesting part for me is actually the idea of AI and drive through is I want 100% of my guests to get a recommendation or get upsold to, et cetera. And I actually think it's really interesting because when that goes wrong, it's like, who's accountable for that? Is the AI tech company that put the system in play, are they to blame? Is it the restaurant brand itself didn't have good enough data to train the model on and got 80% of the way there? And I'll use a recent example that I had at Chipotle. They've got actually a really cool system called Pepper. And I was trying to figure out how to get to a human to say, like, hey, somebody needs to come, spend some time in these restaurants. Like, they're having operational issues. I didn't want a $5 off. But a lot of these systems tend to kind of funnel folks back in through these AI generated chatbot systems. And Angela, I think you actually posted something this morning, a TikTok video that I saw right before I hopped on here, kind of talking about like, hey, can I just pick up the phone and call somebody and get my problem solved or order something? And you go to the next slide, Angela. A lot of that is like, where does AI fit in hospitality? Right now, most AI applications actually sit here in the center. So it's like in place of or to amplify team direct to customer. So that could be around reservations, ordering, drive-through, potentially camera AI, vision AI as you look at it. It's like, is AI well positioned? Is there a world where AI can actually back up and sit behind the team and the team has direct interaction with customer? And I think the theme of what I'm generally thinking when I hear AI and hospitality, and a lot of what we're concentrating on at Fourtop, is how do we position restaurants and restaurant data holistically across the entire restaurant tech ecosystem in order to run AI applications on. When I was running a restaurant group and somebody said, I want to give you AI to solve problems, I was like, great. How does AI keep me from ever having to count inventory again? How does AI keep me from having to count a bar drawer 3 times a day? How does AI keep me from having a bunch of clipboards and checklists, which now have been turned into digital checklists on iPads? Like, how do I not have to pick up a checklist anymore? And I think that narrative I'm excited to kind of explore with the companies today and see, like, how is their AI potentially moving back behind the team? I've I talk about AI in terms of augmented intuition. I'm excited about a world where a bunch of the training development, the rote tasks that are happening behind the team can get amplified and solved via machine learning and then AI eventually, to where a team can actually do what I love doing when I was running restaurants, which is interacting with my team, interacting with the customers directly without anything in between. And that is it. I think you got one more thanks to succeed slide. I will pass it back to you, Angela. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. So Ben is with Fourtop again. Tammy pasted in his LinkedIn profile in the chat if you want to connect with them, or feel free to ask him a question directly in the Q&A or in the chat, and Ben just kind of monitor that. And if you see something come up, feel free to chime in there. We're going to move on to our second speaker here. We have Ty Wilson, who's the co-founder and CEO of Tab Commerce, or just Tab, Ty? Correct.
It's Tab Commerce. I mean, there's a lot of Tab companies out there, so we added commerce on the end. So maybe we'll change the name one day. I don't know.
Awesome. Great to have you.
Awesome. Thank you. Can move on to the next slide.
Sure.
I'll spend just a very small amount of time on these first two slides here, just to put a background on Tab Commerce. We're focused on building the procurement automation platform for restaurants, really solving these base level hard problems that restaurants face in procurement. We've grown a lot over the last 12 months. We do several $100 million of purchases flowing through our system, and our entire team comes from the restaurant business. We'll jump to the next slide. So we've been working on this for 3+ years right now. My family owns restaurants. We started with them, 7 pubs out in Canada. I'm now based in Austin. We've grown a lot with restaurants, and now work with a lot of larger groups. There's 4 main kind of problems that we see, challenges, and they're all tied together. So the first is the data problem. Ben mentioned it really well. Data cleanliness, data structure, it's a big issue. And we don't solve this overall, but it is just kind of a thing that feeds into the problems that are on the right side of the slide. Procurement data, it's, you have these supplier contracts. They typically sit in a cabinet somewhere, and then they're leveraged in an audit, quarterly or annually. And there might be some overcharges or different issues found there, but it's not often used. It's sort of separate from the day-to-day workflow of an AP workflow or some invoice approval process. And so operations, finance, and procurement teams are in many cases separate. And this is just challenging because of the complexity of the purchasing market. It's obviously an offline market. It's pretty opaque. There's not, very straightforward deal structures and things like that. And so it's a tough market to maintain. It's becoming tougher, I think, with price volatility and some other cases around that. But all these kind of come together and create a really tough market for restaurants to navigate. Larger enterprise groups likely have a big internal procurement team. The smaller you get, the harder it is to maintain or have a procurement team. And so a lot of the work either doesn't happen, it gets outsourced, or it just gets overlooked. And so what we're doing at Tab Commerce, and we can jump on to the last slide here. Thank you. What we're doing at Tab Commerce is taking some of these critical workflows that procurement teams do, and we're automating that so it happens in real time. And the benefit of that happening in real time is you can embed this into the daily workflows like a supplier payment process. So you can think of Tab as, we do a lot of these critical procurement work from the moment the supplier sends the invoice to the moment it's ready to be paid. So as soon as that supplier sends the invoice PDF, we're actually pulling it right out of an email inbox. We're turning that into 100% accurate, clean, unified data across all locations. Right now we process thousands of invoices a week. We have an OCR trained on a lot of different suppliers. We have a human team sitting there as well, so we get the accuracy. And so that invoice data flows in, and we start to run analysis against it. And this is stemming from the restaurant's procurement knowledge base, we call it, where you upload your supplier contracts, you upload order guides, you upload these different things that a procurement team would audit for and check for. And we bake that into constant alerts. And that's where the AI comes in, where we're taking that procurement knowledge base and we're mapping it against every invoice that comes in. So we're able to identify errors and fraud, which we've seen across a number of invoices. There's a different kind of look to those, and we're able to kind of train it on all these invoices we see, but then also against supplier contracts. So things like checking for price. Is the price on the invoice matching the supplier contract? Accumulating rebates, things like that. So doing this procurement audit and then going forward to a very seamless approval process, leveraging AI, so making it very, very clean to do from the location level receiving to the GM approving invoice to the finance team. So really focusing on that life cycle of the invoice making sure it's touching each of the parts and the checks and balances that it needs to. So by the end of that, which mostly takes, a few hours or a day or so, the team's ready to pay that invoice and they know that it's actually 100% correct. And by the time they get there, we don't do payments yet. I think that we're heading that direction. But now there's a case where it's fully accurate. We've tracked all the prices. We've taken that data, we put it into different analysis like price monitoring and things like that. And just really done all that hard scrubbing work. So by the end of it, the invoice is ready to go, and the team can have confidence that it's good to be paid, and there's no overcharges, things like that. And so we flow a lot of invoices through, just really streamline that whole life cycle. Add the checks and balances that typically occur in a quarterly and annual audit, do that in real time. And what we've seen is actually 5% plus of the time we're actually finding some sort of overcharge versus contract. We're finding missing rebates, finding an error, duplicate invoices, things like that. So we're starting to continuously train our internal model against finding these things, noticing trends across it, and then now taking that data and helping procurement teams and operations and finance teams use it in their day-to-day operations with reporting, analytics, price monitoring, all these things. And so that's the overall tab platform. I don't have anything else to add. Thanks, Angela.
Yeah, sure. I was just chatting to you. I just think it's cool. I haven't seen this application except for Startup Valley at MURTEC. I saw you a couple of times, but I love the idea of the solution because it's different. You hear about all these things that are customer facing, but all this stuff is so important behind the curtain, and a lot of this gets we don't see it enough. So it's great to see something of that practicality for restaurants. I know everybody's eager to automate wherever they can. We're looking at stellar menus now. Oh, by the way, if you have a question for Ty, you can throw it in the chat. We're looking at stellar menus now. This is menus and AI wrapped around how restaurants are redefining menus. So let's get started with Steve. Steve Latassa Nix is the CEO of Stellar Menus. So Steve, let's roll.
Excellent. Thank you for having me here, Angela. So what I thought I would do today, we can go to the first slide. What I thought I would do is just give you a quick context of who Stellar Menus is so you can understand in context what I'm presenting. And then I wanted to present what I would say are two really practical examples of the use of AI. And they're, I think, will give you a good concept of what's available to you today in your restaurants. So at Stellar Menus, we really focus on two things. The first thing we focus is on helping you know when you need to evaluate the price of a specific item on your menu. And then the second thing we do is we make it easy to make that change. And the reason we focus on that second piece of really having one click to update across all your different platforms is because we saw a lot of restaurants were identifying where they had pricing issues, but it was just very complex to roll them out because often we think about having to redo a whole complex menu and it's very expensive. So with that, let's jump into the examples on the next slide. So the first example that I want to share with you is identifying your cost drivers, right? We are in an industry where for a long time we've had what I consider a very cumbersome process for trying to identify cost drivers. I own a restaurant in Massachusetts. I've tried to deploy a couple different systems in my restaurant, and it's very cumbersome, right? Because you have to not only input all your menus in the beginning, but you have to get a kitchen staff to take care of that and keep those up to date. Then you've got to map them to all your ingredients and all of your invoices. And what we've done at Stellar Menus is we've created an AI engine that reads your menu and identifies with about 85% accuracy the cost drivers on your menu, right? And then you can go up and you can make cleanups as you need. But what happens is the AI engine goes to the menu, and it turns out that most of us write the things that cost us money on our menus because our customers care about them, right? So in this example, whether it's the ribeye or the salmon, which are obvious cost drivers on this menu, we've written them, but we also tend to write on our menus the other cost drivers. So if we have kind of classic expensive ingredients like truffles or caviar, we write that. But if we're a hamburger place and we are carrying like Angus beef, we write that on our menu, or we write bacon, or we write Grafton cheddar cheese, or even in pizza places, we write our toppings because our toppings because our customers care about that, right? And so an AI engine is able to go through and identify what those cost drivers are. So you see in this example here, on a hand-cut ribeye, the cost drivers in this dish that the AI engine came up with were the beef short rib and the veal stock. It also highlighted that the broccolini and the potatoes could potentially be cost drivers. And it's really weighed over and said, which often happens on the proteins, it's weighed over and said these proteins are probably your real cost drivers, right? And so rather than worrying about every single ingredient in this dish, I can worry about monitoring just these specific items. On top of this, we have in our system a proprietary index that watches for trend changes in prices. And so if there is a trend change in the market in the beef short rib, we would issue an alert then and have the team dive in to be able to see what is going on and does the price of this individual dish need to be changed. The second example I want to show you on the next slide is a prioritization, because one of the things that we really learned early on was that too many alerts caused inaction, right? And so a lot of us in our restaurant systems are used to seeing reports that have lots of data, but we're expecting someone to sift through that data to take action. And in an environment where we need to respond more quickly to protect our margins, what we've done is we've used AI on top of this to determine which alerts we need to put in front of the customers and in which order. So in our system, we limit number of alerts typically to 3 that we put in front of a restaurant for price adjustment. And you can see kind of in this slide on the left, we're insinuating, right, that there's a whole bunch of cost drivers that we could put in front, but we use AI to stack rank them. And so we're able to determine which drivers are potentially going to have the biggest impact on your bottom line, right? Because those are the ones that you need to act on first. So in this particular example, the operator would be presented with an alert that says there's been a cost increase on ribeye. It's a 10% cost increase. Because your menu is loaded in our system, we know that that cost increase has happened since you last changed your price. And so we're actually able to tell you the cost of beef short rib has increased, or sorry, in this case, ribeye has increased 10% since you last changed your price. So it's really kind of the marriage of the information that you're already putting out there, which is your menu data, along with AI that's able to understand what the likely ingredients of that are, and then an index that's watching for trends. So rather than having to scan every one of your invoices, we're looking for trends. And then when there is a trend that is specific to an ingredient, we point you in that direction. And then you can pull out your invoices and say, okay, what do I actually need to do here? And so that is the examples that I wanted to share with you here today.
That's great. Thank you so much. Those were really clear examples. I appreciate that. Any questions, throw them in the chat and we'll keep moving on. And at the end, hopefully we'll have a few minutes to just kind of discuss. I'm happy to welcome Mavi to the top speaking panel now. Mavi, are you on the call? I'm sorry you didn't join at the onset.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Hi. Thank you for joining us. So this
Absolutely.
is an interesting application and we're excited to learn more about it. So take it away.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We can go on to the next slide. So I am Vamsi Putravu, CTO co-founder of Mabby.io. We are an in-car commerce platform taking all of your food and restaurant offerings to about 20 million cars this year, including Audis and Jeep, Dodge, Chrysler, the whole of Stellantis brands and Nissan, etc. So, I mean, great examples thus far on, sort of the optimization behind the scenes, menus, etc. So in-car presents a very unique challenge in that a lot of the menus and data today that the restaurants create are for a very stationary experience. If you think about how you consume menus or how you are thinking about ordering food, it's a very stationary experience, and there has never been an application that was created for OnMyWay food ordering or OnMyWay consumption. Next slide, please. So the mission at Mavi from our AI standpoint is to use AI, Gen AI technologies to help normalize data from all the vendors, as well as provide contextual recommendations for drivers. Yeah, let's go ahead, please. So I'm going to hit upon a few specific examples on how we use AI and which areas are we using AI. So think about you driving down the road in your Audi and you're hungry at that point. You say, hey, Audi, I'm hungry. You don't want to be hit with 50 different options from your favorite restaurant. So what we do is, number one, we use a human in the loop mechanism where we have a combination of LLMs as well as a RAG implementation to say, how do we use AI to, number one, get your top selling items from the menus, especially for the long tail restaurants. Maybe for the head ones, like your larger chains, you can get that data directly from the restaurants. But for the long tail, that data is just not available. So we use a combination of AI and RAG methodologies to actually figure out what your top selling items are. So I'm not throwing 50 things at you. I'm only showing you 3 or 5 items while you're driving. And of course, we use AI to personalize offers to the driver, be it you're vegan, you have a peanut allergy, etc. Those are all specific personalization parameters that we take into account. And for curations as well, we never let any of these menus go in, especially with what we saw before. Garbage in, garbage out is super important, where we do have that human in the loop, that curation element on top of any AI that we are putting out there. Yeah, let's go ahead, please. So let's think about menu normalization as well, right? Right before I hit upon curation, but from a normalization standpoint, it is very important for us to understand while you're driving, you don't want a 500-word description of a menu item. You don't want to know how many different ingredients. Those are all details that make sense when you're stationary. So we actually use Gen AI technologies to take a standard menu and optimize it to a shorter form, consumable fashion in the car, right? Think about the form factor and what data points you can consume, and we optimize it to that. And another super important thing that we do is, you will have a conversational interface in your car when you say, hey, I'm interested in Chinese food, etc. So we actually started to create a standard taxonomy, and that's where I'm really interested in working with all of you and RTN specifically to see what kind of work can we all do together to create standardization in terms of taxonomies across, hundreds of thousands of menus that are available out there. And internally, we use a very specific technology of saying, let's use vectorization in terms of vector databases, as well as BM25 models, and use ensemble models to classify these menus into the standard taxonomy. So I'm also just looking at some of the questions. The in-car ordering integration. So typically, from an integration standpoint, for an in-car, we think about like a standard Uber Eats type of an integration. It is very much in line with that. We take your standard menu data, pricing updates, inventory updates, and the ability to push you orders. That's what we need. It's fairly standard in terms of how you would integrate with an existing Uber Eats lane. Yeah, let's go ahead, please. So what is our AI differentiation at Mavi? So number one, as I mentioned, the AI and Gen AI capabilities that we are using to rapidly ramp up across hundreds of thousands of restaurants is helping us onboard restaurants more efficiently. As much as we can think, data is the truth is that yes, garbage in, garbage out, but a lot of data is garbage. And we are using AI specifically to to determine structure as much as we can from this sort of disparate and very unstructured information that's available out there. Another super important thing we are also investing in is semantic knowledge graphs in the restaurant space. I'm not going to double click too much into that, but happy to have a conversation with anyone who's interested in that space. So obviously we're combining all of this with a human in the loop domain expertise, where we have deep expertise in food tech that allows us to provide that layer of safety net on top of all of the AI work. Let's go ahead, please. So faceting, attributes, conversational ordering. So a lot of times, yes, we have a touch interface where we have optimized menus and selections, but you have a conversational sort of interface that we are enabling within the car that allows you to, number one, have a conversation like the gentleman earlier was saying, ChatGPT is great at it, but we have created customized models on top of existing large models available out there that will allow you to have a specific conversation that's personalized to your needs and in an in-car setting. And of course, the standard customer service segments and everything else, we are definitely using AI over there. I think that's about it. Happy to take any questions.
That was fantastic. That was very exciting. New and exciting application. Questions in the chat and/or I believe Tammy inserted his LinkedIn profile there. MC's LinkedIn profile is there. Yes. So thank you so much. Let's move on to our friends at Decise.
Hi, everyone. My name is, I'm sorry, Angela.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Take it away.
Hey, everyone. It's good to meet you. My name is Kyle Pott. I'm one of the founders of Decise, and SailX is one of our AI products. And essentially, just to maybe wrap the comments from previous in this session together, really what we do with SailX is we take the best of AI, that'd be the ChatGPT large language model, and then we pair in our expertise primarily with the POS and OLO to embed the menus, the restaurant's menu, and create an experience for the drive-through, for the kiosk, or for a Siri-like experience in the apps that allows voice ordering. Go ahead, please. Yeah, so to summarize that, really what we're trying to do is build a bridge. Like there's already world-class large language models. Those are in ChatGPT today. There's already world-class voice to text and text to voice. We take advantage of that as well. And really what we emphasize here is, applying that for the restaurant industry. We've been supporting a variety of restaurants doing their app and web infrastructure for the past couple of years. And this is an area where really what's needed here is not more emphasis on custom models, and really what's needed is more application of world-class AI for restaurants. And the way that we do that is we ingest the full menu architecture, including the modifier logic. We integrate with loyalty and discounts so customers can look up and earn points for their order. And then what we have is this, we call a no-code backend. So marketers can just in plain text say what type of personality they want their AI to have, how they want to greet the guest, if they want to do a product emphasis at the start of the interaction, or they want to do an upsell at the close. And beyond that, really, I think the power is in the proprietary integrations that we have with Olo and with the POS so that you can build a basket. It can adhere to the restaurant's required modifier logic and place an order. And with that said, I think I have one more slide here, which shows well, that's kind of a summary of what I just described, but yeah, API integration with full menu architecture to respect the modifiers, integration with loyalty and discount providers, and then, our own proprietary tech that's taking the most advantage that we can with OpenAI today to be able to build quality baskets and allow the guests to check out. So I'd like to do a demo. I have one more slide prior to doing that, but just to give you kind of a sense of what we're talking about here is just regular common way that you would talk at a drive-through or at a kiosk. So can I get that item? SailX will help with any of the required modifiers. I'll show that. You can ask for loyalty points, give an email address or a phone number to do the lookup. Can ask, certain questions about the products, pairings, upsells, and all those rules are populated by marketing teams, not requiring any code, but can just put that directly in with regular plain old language. So I'd love to do a quick demo for you guys. Angela, can I take over the share? I'm
Yep,
just gonna.
yep, let me stop and you can grab it. There you go.
Awesome. Let me just do a quick share from my iPad to the full screen here. Share the full screen.
Looks good.
Okay. Is the UI coming through?
Yep, we can see it.
Great. So I'm just going to refresh the screen and we'll do just a quick demo here. Let me make sure my volume's turned up so you can hear.
Welcome to Potbelly Drive-Thru. Go ahead and place your order when ready.
Could you guys hear that okay?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Sure, I'd like a Mediterranean. Sure, I'd like a Mediterranean.
Please provide the size and bread type for the Mediterranean sandwich. You can choose between skinny, original, and big, and white, multigrain, or flat bread.
Sure, let me do white bread and let me do a big.
I have added the big Mediterranean with white bread to your order. What else would you like?
And you can see here, we've respected the modifiers. The big Mediterranean comes with an upcharge. The breads themselves don't. So you can see that we've got the base price of the product. We've got the modifier logic through the AI. You've got your subtotal. And at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and wrap it up. I don't want to add anything else.
Your order is all set. Would you like to add a dessert to finish off your meal? We have cookies, milkshakes, and smoothies that are perfect for a sweet treat.
And you can see there's an example of a custom upsell rule that a marketing team could add to the end of the flow. I'm not going to do that right now. I'm just going to do kind of a simple checkout. And that's Sale X. Yeah, that's Sale X in a nutshell. So primarily targeting drive-through. Like I said, kiosk or hybrid kiosk, as well as Siri-like interaction.
Great, thank you. We will move on to ConnectedFresh. I believe ConnectedFresh is our last speaker of the day, which will give us a little time at the end. So take it away, Jake.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Angela. So hello, everyone. Good afternoon for at least most of you. My name is Jake Simon. I help lead the team here over at ConnectedFresh. So what ConnectedFresh is we are 24/7 proactive monitoring. We're identifying and flagging issues across the organization as soon as or even before they occur. And that or before, right, is a lot of the topic of this conversation around AI. So if we can go to the next slide, right? One thing that we wanted to highlight here is just some of the use cases, right? So I'm going to kind of blast through this, really want to get at the meat of the AI portion, right? But some of the monitoring solutions is a non-exhaustive list of, temperature monitoring, taking over, someone going around and taking those checklists of writing down things as writing down temperatures as they go through. Ben at the beginning mentioned, how do I not have to pick up a checklist anymore, right? That is, we should make that part of our mantra, right? How are we enabling teams to be more efficient and effective without having to, take out a tablet or take out a physical checklist or even take out a tablet or anything like that. So, to take that further, automated cooldown logs. Those are, we fully automated that process and able to, you don't even have to interact with a tablet. How is some of the technology behind it figuring out that something has started a process and it's starting that automatically and notifying you when you need to be paying attention to something. Stephen also mentioned during this chat that, too many alerts cause inaction, right? That is 100% true. How can you need to not only identify what people need to be paying attention to, but more importantly, if, all these false positives, as soon as people stop trusting that something is something that they need to be actioning on, the entire thing grinds to a halt, right? They don't trust anything anymore. And so that's a lot of what we've seen of, people working with, the topic of IoT. IoT has many, many, many different flavors. But that's sometimes some of the things that that people see, but also some of the things that AI can help with. So kind of blast through these, power consumption monitoring, doors, leaks, cleanliness, bathrooms, all this kind of stuff, right? We're pulling together from facilities, operations, and food safety, all in one platform with a model that's super flexible, right? Add at any time. So if we can jump on to the next slide, right? We actually don't manufacture any sensors ourselves. We're using off-the-shelf components. They can all be set up in 15 minutes or less. But predominantly, right, we're a software and advanced analytics company, and that advanced analytics includes AI. And really what we're solving for at the end of the day is labor tasks that can be automated, and the organization wants it to be automated for certain reasons, including digitization, but also that worker doesn't necessarily want to be spending their time on these menial types of tasks. Operations challenges, facilities inefficiencies, trying to solve for equipment downtime and things like that. So if we can jump to the last slide, this is actually the meat of what we wanted to talk about in this discussion, right? Using AI to drive value across, IoT and beyond. So this is mostly taking, a facilities type of approach, right? But, these types of solutions can work across operations, food safety, et cetera. So one great example is you have a temperature monitor, right? Something that looks like this. This is put into a walk-in. Now you're digitizing the temperature. Okay, well, am I getting an alarm or an alert? There's warning, minor, major, critical, but I start to get alerted when something hits 42 degrees, right? And sustains. Okay, well, let's pretend that it says it's, 38 degrees. Everything is okay. But is that refrigerator still running at what it should be, right? If we take a door sensor and a energy consumption monitor like this, right? This just goes around the cord and clamps down. This is now giving us the energy data. So when we talk about AI and anomaly detection and all this kind of stuff, right? AI can be a very generalized term sometimes, but some of the models behind it, right? If we start correlating this data from different sensors across, right, it becomes super, super powerful. So even though that temperature was 38 degrees and that seems like it's good, right? What if that compressor is really way overworking to get there, right? You're driving up your utility bills, you're signaling early failure. And really, this is something that you wouldn't otherwise be able to look at the asset and be able to figure out that something is wrong. So, you take that data and you send it to another platform, your work order management platform, open a work order ticket automatically, send it to someone else, right? And they're able to see all this data in real time. So there are different levels to this, right? And this is really the core that we wanted to get to is, reactive is a lot of the state of what people are in. If anyone here on the call is past this, that's awesome, right? We're working with the RTN standards to help educate people on this side. But reactive is really wait till it breaks and then we're gonna figure it out, right? But that can even lead to a store having to close because something is broken. Preventative is preventative maintenance. It's a common term of how are we scheduling things to be able to be taken care of so that we're minimizing our risk. We're not negating it, right? Stuff can still go wrong, but we're very much minimizing it. The proactive and predictive side, right, is where we start using AI and anomaly detection, et cetera, where we're able to use some sophisticated models to basically be able to tell us insights, is the power consumption more today than it was last week or last quarter or this time last year, right? Are there things that, looking at a data graph, it would take a mathematician or a statistician to be able to see these trends, right? Can we bring these to light automatically and in a way that is helpful, right? But at the end of the day, right, you're identifying that something is going wrong or could be going wrong, and you're bringing that to light. Prescriptive is really where we all want to be, right? Where it's actually telling you not, hey, this is a problem, but this is what you can do about it, right? And that's what some of these recent developments in the AI world, right, have really blown up recently, is allowing us to do this capability. I mean, we were already doing this, right, but doing it to the degree where it's a lot more informative, can easily connect to systems, takes in your SOPs, things like that, right? But if something does go wrong, if early failure is predicted, right, we want to be prescriptive about it. someone needs to go take action, is it's not only sending to the right person with the right alert and the right notification, but is it sending to the right system, right? So like us, we're very focused on, you know, bringing down the walled gardens of data, right? We want to be able to, as far as we're concerned, the data is yours, right? So where do you want it? If it's going to connect to a work order management system, to, you know, like EcoTrack, those, right? To be able to go to compliance management checklist systems, things like that, or just your internal data lake or a BI tool, right? You're able to send all that information over to there so that you can pull it in and contextualize it with the greater organization's needs across different roles, right? So you're not just fixed on one. So so that is the part that we are certainly doing today, and growing this in a major way. Tons of different types of sensors, as you can imagine, right? But ultimately, we want to be able to bring people from being reactive to proactive. I just want to end this on one last note, right? I always like to give a give and an ask, right? So my give is if anyone does want to connect on, you know, these types of systems and just how to approach smart sensors or anything like that, but mostly pitfalls to avoid, right? I'm not saying go with ConnectedFresh, right? I'm just saying, you know, how can we help you understand what are some of the things that you should be considering, so that you're going into it with a long-term solution, whatever that solution may be. And my ask is, if there are other challenges that we're not already solving for, would always just be hungry for any feedback. So my email is in my name card here, Jake Simon, jake@connectedfresh.com. So thank you very much for the time, and I hope this has been helpful.
Thanks, Jake. Hugely helpful. And exciting to see how all these things might connect together. To use, you know, a word in your brand, you know, connected, fresh. You're like, how do all these solutions that we're on this call even connect? I mean, there's a sort of a common DNA, a thread, and I think that's really data, you know, throughout everything. And Tim, I know you had some questions. That was our last speaker, but Tim, you had thrown some questions in the chat. I would love for you to speak up here and ask one of these questions that you had in the chat that I thought were really great.
I think my questions were all kind of along the same lines, and maybe just a question for the panel at large is, I think you've all done a great job of giving us an overview of kind of the pain points or kind of the problems that you're trying to solve for the restaurant industry. I'm particularly interested in understanding kind of where the spend is that you're seeing as you engage with restaurant brands. In other words, specifically, what pain points are you seeing them actually willing to take out their wallets and start to spend on, as it relates to the various aspects and the problems that you were solving for them?
This is an open discussion. Anybody want to answer or address that question?
And even the restaurant brands on top, I'd be interested in your response to it too as well.
Yeah, Tim, I think I'll answer first. Our holistic data architecture tends to get a lot of excitement around fraud prevention, like pre-accounting. How am I catching potential financial issues that can affect my direct bottom line, while also setting a foundation for future excitement around AI, automation, et cetera. So as I think about like, what's the value right this minute? What are restaurant brands willing to spend money on to understand how to get margin back? I think that's a pretty easy answer, but I don't think it dampens the future hope of how can I not worry about that in the future? How can I start working toward some business logic, automation, et cetera, to be able to just have that be a part of running our business and running our tech stack.
Yeah. Hey, Tim, this is Stephen. This is Stephen from Stellar Menus. I think we're seeing people are more inclined right now to be spending money on improving their cost structures, right? I kind of always look at this puzzle as you could get more revenue or you could save costs. And people seem to be in a mode of spending money on saving costs right now very heavily. You know, we are trying to preach an approach that, you know, you can get small increments, and I'm not talking about dynamic pricing here. So just anyone's hearing that, that's not what I'm talking about. But there are opportunities to get small increments on individual dishes where your margins have shrunk, and to correct those prices But right now, we're finding that a pretty hard message in the marketplace.
Yeah, to add on to that, this is again Vamsi from Mavi. So in-car ordering and in-car commerce as a lane itself is being seen by the restaurants as a very innovative lane. And there is drive-through optimization, drive-through times, and how long it takes. We've had conversations with a very large chicken sandwich place that faces a lot of this clogging of drive-throughs, which wants to basically mimic the same drive-through experience in the car and do both voice and touch. So super interesting optimization use cases for us.
Can you say more about that mimicking the drive-through experience in the car? I mean, there's still the human touch part that seems to be kind of the bottleneck of delivering the food to the car once it's on lot, despite how quickly they can prepare the food. So how do you mean?
Sure. So if you think about sort of the experience right now of a car going through a drive-through, there is the point where you go through, look at the menu, make your decision points, add to your cart, then there is the payment aspect of it and everything else, right? Then, of course, the last mile is the delivery piece itself of whether you go into the store or the food is bought out. So if you think about everything that happens before the actual either in-store or the delivery, which includes looking at your menu, making choices based on all your preferences and personalization, right? And paying for it and making sure that order is actually delivered into the POS system and ready and optimized. So that aspect of it, we are mimicking from the drive-through experience in the car. And number two, the critical thing is also giving ETA updates. So when a passenger or when a user calls a restaurant and says, hey, I'm 5 minutes away, no one trusts them. But if a car is able to push an ETA update, we worked with Olo to add that ETA update into their specification and standard and a lot of other specs. So when the car is able to say, hey, the driver's 5 minutes away, everyone trusts that data point. So those are the two big ways in which we are optimizing the whole drive-through experience.
Okay.
And as I mentioned, the payments is the big one too.
So mimicking what most might have in like a mobile app, but with the ETA component,
That's right.
is Olo also able to have insights from the restaurant real time to say, well, they have a queue of this many orders and of the basket size this big, or they're to deliver 17 burgers before you're in line. And so even if I'm 5 minutes away, my order may not be ready for 10. Is that kind of? Okay.
We actually have that patented where we are giving estimates to the driver, not just based on drive time, but on prep time. And we are getting the prep time from the restaurants or crowdsourcing this data based on in and out times. So it's a combination of all of those that we are taking and able to estimate how long it takes for you to actually stand in line and wait. So obviously I don't want you to get off the freeway and wait in line for half an hour in the, exactly to the use case that you mentioned. I would rather send you to a location that's closer to your home. These are all sort of this last mile optimizations that we are able to bring to the table.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Sure.
I'd love to see a demo, like maybe on our next call, you can come back on it and show us, like, if I'm driving in my car, what does this look and feel like to the end user and the experience, and how is all that information, like as you said, it says the integration is so smooth with your Olo customers, then how does that look in an ideal setting? Like, what kind of car am I driving? What does it say? What does it look like on the dashboard? Is it not distracting me? All of this stuff is so new. It'd be really cool to see a live demo of, like, if we were driving a car, what would it look like to us and feel like, and from a restaurant perspective, I'm sure the restaurants would start the restaurant operators on the call and even the technology suppliers would start linking the dots as to, like, what it took for you to deliver those predictive things that you're delivering to that customer in that car.
Oh, and if you're taking requests, I think, Angela, you and I could take a road trip in my Audi, and this is what I'd love to do, is say, this is the real experience is I'm going to somewhere down the road in Oklahoma I've never been. And I don't want to see the restaurants that are at the next few exits because they're all fast food. And I wanted an experience that's like a hole in the wall cafe. And then I could look at their Yelp reviews. So I'd say, Angela, go look 50 miles up, zoom in on your little map, tell me what restaurants are around there, then look at their reviews on Yelp, and then find the items that I think sound really yummy. I don't want spicy ranch, but I kind of want fried pickles. And that's their top reviewed item. Like, I would love to have an experience like that because it takes an entire car full to really satisfy what's happening on my road trips, real life, or we're
That's right.
downloading drive-ins, dives, and diners and trying to find what's on our route, or what alternate route could we take. I'm willing to do that for the experience, but not for a Burger King. I mean, no offense to Burger King, I'm just saying, not even for a Jack in the Box.
Yeah, totally get it. That'd be amazing to see how it really comes to life.
Right.
Yeah.
And speaking of Jack in the Box, I saw recently that Wall Street Journal article about, obviously the hike in minimum wage in California and how many restaurants are located there for you guys. I know that is a real challenge right now. So speaking of like what I think restaurants would pay to automate right now, I just think it goes back to however we can automate labor is really critical, just in light of that huge, massive change in legislation. Anytime I think there's a wave of legislation that far-reaching and into the psyche of the restaurant industry, you've got to kind of look at it and go, how can we use technology to help us get out of here, or sort of pivot in some unique and meaningful way to help us do what we need to do for our people, but yet still be profitable. That's a unique balance.
Mm-hmm. I personally think we're gonna need to get back to the basics or the fundamentals a bit of baseball. Like, we need to focus on the operator experience, in my opinion, and making sure we're not paying for turnover that happens so quickly. So if we can make their experience at work better, then we don't have as much turnover, and that knowledge really goes a longer way. And then also increase throughput through the drive-through, because that's where delivery drivers are clogging drive-throughs right now. So walk-up windows, automated HME headset automations that are saying, ding, you have someone coming to the window, and help get those people through. So if I'm at a stoplight and I have 4 choices of 4 restaurants, which one's the shortest line? The one that doesn't have drive-through clogged up by delivery drivers. So just a lot of things to consider.
Yes.
We've got Cynthia here as well. Maybe she can chime in. She's spoken to a lot of restaurants in terms of drive-through Cynthia, are you here? Probably on mute. All right, Angela, I think, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Happy to do a follow-up and show you an in-car version of how the whole experience looks like.
I think that would be really cool. And as far as like everybody on the call just presented such great information today. I would love our next call also to look at like, the integrations that you have a little bit deeper, and like how might things integrate when you think about layering AI. I mean, I've heard a lot of people say AI first lately, like their platform is built at AI first. It's almost like you think about back in the day, when you think about everyone was talking about open architecture and open API or digital first. And now you're saying AI first, which I think is really interesting. But when you have to layer the AI in, if it's not built on AI, how is that data working, and how are you integrating with partners and how are you pulling data, or who owns the data, or how are you reading the data and using the data to harness it and make it actionable? Maybe that's a question for you, Ben. Without any, I guess, privacy concerns or without any like complications with the integration partners that they have in their stack.
Yeah, I don't think we have time to answer all that, but
yeah, I know.
those are great questions.
It's another call, because I think that's important when we talk about all these things. It's so cool to see a quick overview, but diving into the data is so critical.
Yeah, I hopefully share this across this entire group, that if somebody isn't thinking AI first means that the restaurant owns the data, I think that's problem number one. There's integrations in open architecture. I think about that old show that I think has made a comeback, The Weakest Link.
Yeah.
We find that a lot, where, I mean, even in the in-car example, it's like all that can be amazing until it actually hits some stagnant older architecture or non-open system that's physically present inside the four walls. To Casey's point, like, how do I understand what each cash register's productivity and throughput is, and how does that affect digital orders, right? What's the human empathetic experience happening inside the four walls of the building, and how does that radiate out through all the digital channels, AI or not? I think that's the next step of kind of building architecture and systems to enable AI holistically across hospitality.
Yeah, well said. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. If you have any remaining questions, I hope you grabbed the LinkedIn contact for all of our great speakers. Thank you all for joining us, both as attendees, and thank you especially to our speakers who put together the great presentations we saw today. We look forward to seeing you on the next RTN AI Share Group. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.